Hey guys, Chris here, and I am a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is October 15th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So first I want to talk about the Avdiivka offensive by the Russians. I'll go over the map, and then I want to talk about the conflict in the Middle East as well between Israel, Palestine, Hamas. So let's get to it. Essentially in Avdiivka, as reported last Monday, the Russians have started a large offensive that we haven't seen since Vuhledar and Bakhmut. So far, what the good news are is that since Monday, the Russians have not been successful at taking Avdiivka. This was supposed to be a major surprise attack against the Ukrainian defenses there. And the Russians instead had a bad surprise on their end, which means colossal losses, which of course was expected as well because that's the best they can get. The Russians are so poorly degraded at this point, right? They're fighting with very old systems. They don't have the combined arms capabilities as well. So it's very chaotic. And based on the videos that I've seen, it's just large Russian convoys, yet again, driving through very narrow roads, backdoor trying to, quickly get through, but they're quickly, found out by the Ukrainian drones. And I've seen a lot of usage of first-person view drones from the Ukrainian side, very precise artillery strikes against these Russian convoys and infantry attacks. And also, what was the other thing is that the Ukrainians were also using ATGM missiles very well against lone Russian tanks trying to quickly get through fields. So that's really good news for the Ukrainian side. And as you can see, basically the Russian losses for the past week, according to the Kiev Post, is 102 tanks, 183 armored vehicles lost, and close to 3,000 troops killed. So clearly, this wasn't the Russian goals to lose that many soldiers in 1 week. But we'll have to see. It remains to be seen if the Russians will continue pressing forward, considering the amount of losses that they've had. Will they double down, which I think is going to be the case here? They'll probably double down and continue throwing as much men as possible, but maybe they'll adapt. Maybe they'll learn that we need to concentrate these troops somewhere else, right? So this is kind of another kind of sunk cost fallacies that Russia creates for themselves. They think they're going to be super successful in one of their offensives. They say, "Wow, we've gotten great ground. Look at us. We're taking villages." But then they realize it's actually, they're not really getting anything. But they can't look bad in front of the Russian population. Putin can't look bad. Shoigu can't look bad. Gerasimov cannot look bad. So they need to turn into like a great success story, which clearly in this case it's not. And like Vuhledar, and even at this point Bakhmut, right, the Russians are losing more and more ground in the south and the north of Bakhmut, which is very good for the Ukrainians. Let's take a look at the map. Let me remind some of my viewers where Avdiivka is. For those who don't know, it's north of Donetsk. The Ukrainian forces had a very successful small counteroffensive here, and they regained some ground in Upitne a few weeks ago. And I think this is kind of an answer as well to that. The Russians simply cannot allow the Ukrainian forces to gain initiative here, especially because they're so close to Donetsk city. Donetsk city is also a symbolic city for the Russians. It's the capital of the DPR, or even, for the Russians, it's like losing Donetsk is losing Donbass. So of course, that's not going to happen. I'm just saying that having the Ukrainians so close to Donetsk city is really a bad thing. And of course, I definitely believe that once Ukraine wins, they will retake the entirety of Donbass, as the Russians will have to withdraw since their forces are so degraded. But that's in the future. We're talking about long term here. Unfortunately, we all wanted this conflict to end very quickly, but I think that when we're speaking about the Russian-Ukrainian war, it's long term. So, anyways, I digress from the main topic is that the Russians are trying to push out the Ukrainians because they've had some successful small counteroffensives so close to their capital of Donbass. The other thing is that this is good news for the Ukrainians because it's drawing a lot of resources, Russian resources, yet again, into a front that isn't really that impactful. Even if the Russians take Avdiivka, we never know. This doesn't bring them closer to severing kind of a land bridge and getting to Dnipro, let's say, or Pavlograd, right? It's actually almost impossible for the Russians at this point based on how degraded their forces are. Whereas for the Ukrainians, we know that they're not too far away from the Azov Sea, and breaking this land bridge, this Russian land bridge from Orikhiv to the Azov Sea would be catastrophic for them. This would be the beginning of the end for Putin's regime, right? Um, Basically, we know that Crimea is very vulnerable to this land bridge being cut off. The only way is then just the Kerch bridge. If that is broken, that's it for Crimea. They'll be completely isolated and being picked up by the Ukrainians very easily. But this is also long term. Let's face it, this is not going to be tomorrow. We're talking probably close to, in 2024, we'll still be talking about this offensive. I have no doubts because of the amount of resources, human resources, the Russians still have in Zaporizhia. So far, in terms of Orikhiv, it's the same. So nothing has changed either. The Ukrainians continue pushing out slowly but surely towards Novoprokopivka and Verbove, trying to take these two villages probably before this year. I think this is one of their goals, is getting closer to this, more or less the middle of the Surovikin line, and taking Novoprokopivka and Verbove is crucial to that. And they've also sort of started pushing the Russians out of Kopani, so perhaps even consolidating the west and the east of this front line. So that's about it in terms of Bakhmut as well. The Ukrainians are pushing forward from Klishivka and Andreevka. They're going towards Odradivka. So this is the new objective now. Since they've taken Klishivka and Andreevka, now they need to take Odradivka. And the main goal here is to take it back, of course, Bakhmut, or encircling Bakhmut, like partially encircle it, I should say, which means the south, taking the south here. And so that includes taking back Opitne, Ivangrad. So this is the second objective. These villages that are close to the main road here that connects all of them. So the Ukrainians are getting slowly some ground, but again, it's a very long fight here. The Russians have a lot of forces as well. So that's pretty much it in terms of the main changes. The Ukrainians are attacking in Bakhmut. They're getting attacked in Avdiivka by the Russians, and they're not, being very successful here so far. And they're also attacking, the Ukrainians are attacking in Orikhiv and continue trying to taking the two next villages, which are Novoprokopivka and Verbove. So let me know what you guys think about Avdiivka. Do you think the Russians will double down, which I think is the case, or do you think they'll be like, okay, let's stop this, let's regroup and find a new tactic? Now, I want to talk about the other conflict, and that is the Israel-Palestine / Hamas conflict in the past week. So I want to set the record straight, since I have said in my previous video that I support Israel's actions against Hamas simply because we can't tolerate this type of terrorism in the world. So although I support that, this does not give a free pass for Israel to do whatever they want with the Palestinian people. There are people, they're humans, and they need to be treated as such, and they have the right to coexist in that area, in my opinion. And being that Israel, in my opinion, is the superior actor, they have a sizable force. The world is also supporting them in, them having their state. They have a moral obligation to do everything possible to minimize civilian casualties and just find solutions to coexist. Whether we like it or not, Palestinians will be there, and Israeli people are going to be there. And voicing genocidal narratives, whether it be from Israel's side or the Palestinian side, is never going to bring a peaceful resolution here. In which I hate hearing also, Israel, like Ukraine, needs to follow Ukraine's pathway. You think Ukraine would be getting support if they start saying, slaughter all Russian people, let's destroy entire cities? No. So Israel needs to follow that mindset that, we need to just reform the Palestinians. Unfortunately, they were led by years and years and years of Hamas control, like Putin's regime, brainwashing them, telling them that Israel is the cause of all the evil and we need to destroy them. Whereas they haven't been investing into Palestinian economy, the Palestinian, just prosperity within the Palestinian people. It's all about, it's us versus them. And that's the mindset that we can all follow, whether it be, between Ukraine and Russia, or Israel versus Hamas and Palestine. No genocidal narratives will bring us to peace and prosperity and finding just, at least being able to coexist. I'm not expecting utopia, but finding solutions and just being obligated to be morally superior. Israel and the Jewish population underwent one of the biggest tragedies known to humankind, the Holocaust. They should know better that, you know, living through that, many, many decades ago, to find a way to avoid that in our history. The Ukrainians underwent so much genocide from the Russian side, and they are not fighting this type of war by, launching missiles across various Russian cities and killing their population, their civilian population. And you guys know my position. I'm completely against that as well. Only military targets. That's what's differentiating Ukraine with Russia. Ukraine is fighting, obviously, they were invaded as well. Ukraine was invaded by Russia, but they also are fighting a very morally just war against Russia, which indicates how superior Ukraine is in terms of, its ambitions, its goals to be a free and democratic nation. Whereas the Russians, they are hijacked by Putin's regime. So I'm just drawing very similar parallels between Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Hamas. So I hope you guys understand my position here. I try to be as fair and just. The Palestinians have rights. They, whether we like it, whether Israel likes it or not, they will continue to live on that land. And finding solutions to coexist together and showing an example is very important. And you're not going to be showing by example by destroying the entire Gaza Strip, leveling down, skyscrapers left and right where civilians roam and live. So that's my position. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.